Yes, yes, this is Mr. Controversy, and this is the infamous three-point conversion station. Keep it locked.
Coast to coast, town to town, this is your home for the Cleveland Browns. What's going on, everybody? This is Eric, and joining me as always is L.A. Broadus. L.A.
Hey, how's it going, man? BrownsTown. I'm ready. I'm excited. We have some juicy topics to jump into this week, so I'm ready.
Man, it's already starting to look like football season. It's beginning to look a lot like Cleveland every single day. But
yeah, I thought about that song, too. As soon as you had said that, I was like, yeah, this is going to turn into some weird Christmas song kind of transition.
hey,
But but it's all good, man, because I'm excited that, like I said, the air is crisp with football. The excitement is buzzing. I got a call yesterday from Berea just asking me and talking to me about, our involvement, the three-point conversions involvement with Cleveland and stuff like that. So hopefully that translates into some bigger and better things for all of us. But, yeah, I'll be heading out to training camp July 30th, man, so 10 days and counting.
Absolutely. I happened to get a call from Berea yesterday, too. They won my social security number, so I don't think it was the Browns. But anyways,
I think that's a requirement, man, to make the team. You never know.
You know what? Nowadays, I would not be surprised. I mean, the way USA Today is looking at everything, it seems like they're asking for, do you have prior any kind of football experience to play for the Buffalo Bills or the Indianapolis Colts at this point?
Ooh, shots fired.
But that's a good segue into the first topic that we have. The USA Today newspaper, I know that's technically not what it's called, it's just called USA Today, put out their annual projections for the start of training camp, and holy crap, they're actually saying that we're going to win 5 games.
Interesting. Yeah, I come across this as well and seen it. And let's see, my thoughts on it is that I'm not mad. Of course, you have an initial fan outrage that say, oh, heck nah, this, that, and the other. I'm not mad at 5-11. Why? Because let's be realistic. Amongst all the excitement and, all the additions and pieces that we've added, still, we were a 0-16 team. And most of the time after a team goes 0-16, they kind of project to win within the 4 to 5 win range. It's not on USA Today or anybody else to give us the respect that we deserve. We have to go out there on the field and actually prove it to them. Looking at the rankings, I know they had us at 5-11, and then they had the Bengals ahead of us at 7 wins.
They had them at 7-9, the Ravens at 7-9, and then the Steelers at 10-6, which that's honestly where I do have some tipping points with the other teams, believe it or not.
Okay, tell me a little bit about it.
All right, so the first thing that I do notice is, let's start off with our fellow bottom dwellers, the Bengals. They didn't really do as much as people think that they did. I mean, did they get better? No, not really. Did they get worse? Again, not really. I just don't see them being a team that's that close to 500 when I don't even remember them making any kind of significant change other than firing and hiring Marvin Lewis. Maybe I'm missing something here, but I don't remember Cincinnati doing a damn thing.
Did you say firing Marvin Lewis?
They fired him, and then I thought they rehired him, no?
Oh, well, they were going back and forth. The rumors were that Marvin was going to step down or that they were going to have like a mutual agreement, but never happened. And then apparently I'm hearing now that as soon as they get done with him being the coach, they're going to put him in the front office. So,
AKA they're waiting for Hugh Jackson to be fired.
You know what? I'm not even calling for that anymore. I'm gonna give Hugh this season to show whatever it is. I'm pretty sure that, I mean, our owners, Jimmy and D, I'm pretty sure that, you know, they won't mind hooking Hugh. They haven't had a problem with hooking coaches in the past, so I'm pretty sure that, you know, if Hugh goes out and just does absolutely terrible, then they have the coordinators, you know, with Todd Haley and Greg Williams to be able to, you know, slide one of them into the, you know, intern position or possibly make them the permanent head coach.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they've done that this year, and they set themselves up. Like, I don't know if a lot of people been thinking about it that, well, no, because everybody been wanting Hugh to be fired. But I really think that this time, and that's probably the best thing, getting back to the predictions, that I'm more excited about with the Browns this year is that they've actually built themselves, you know, I guess they set themselves up for success based off of how they built their front office now and compared to how they constructed their roster. So we know that John Dorsey is all about business. He's doing a great job as the GM so far. We know that Hugh Jackson, is that anomaly right now, but now he's able to kind of float around and do what he's supposed to do, shake hands, kiss babies, which is what he's good at. He's good at, you know, morale. Like, that is one thing I will say that Hugh Jackson is good at. He can make the players happy. You know, he's a player's coach, a guy's guy. You know, he seemed like he's making everybody happy. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that, and honestly, it's a nice change of pace because I remember some of the stuff that people didn't really care about Pettin that much because he was, from what I remember, from mainly Hard Knocks, watching him with, I believe it was the Jets at the time, because Bills were never on Hard Knocks, I believe. But anyways, I just remember watching him, and he seemed like the type of guy that was a bit of a stickler at times.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And into recent memory, I can't really remember a coach that just stood out as far as just being that overall nice guy. And it was something that I actually worried about with Hugh Jackson, especially with him being playing offensive coordinator as well. I don't agree with the first-time head coach, or anybody for that matter, just doing all the responsibilities. There's so much that you got to do. When we look across, we see Bill Belichick has strong coordinators alongside of him, in New England. Mm-hmm. Also, just anybody else that you could think of, except for, well, okay, hold on. I might be actually stepping on my own foot here because Sean McVay he does both, doesn't he?
Sean McVay, I don't know if he does. I mean, I remember Mike McCarthy with the Packers did for a while, but that recently changed. I don't know about McVay. I mean, in any case, it's a very risky thing, which usually is a good reason for someone to get fired or to end up sticking around. Hugh accepted that he couldn't do it and had Haley take on the responsibility. And honestly, it's probably the biggest move that we had this offseason.
Yes, that move right there, that's one of them things that when I started hearing the rumors, and I think me and you had a conversation about this, when I started hearing the rumors of Todd Haley possibly coming, it was one of them things that you was like, it doesn't happen to us. Not as Browns fans. That doesn't happen. We can't get a coordinator from a rival team. We send our coordinators and our players to the rival teams. It doesn't happen the other way.
That's exactly it.
Well, besides the big thing of you remember when Jamal Lewis came to us.
That was just luck.
Yeah. So, it's just not a normal thing for us to see that happen. So when it was rumored, man, to be honest with you, I was like, yeah, whatever. LeBron, the Browns are connected to everybody. Anytime anybody gets released, anytime any kind of head coach or anything gets released, just because of the, where we've been dwelling at for years, we've always been connected to somebody. So I just couldn't believe it could happen. Greg Williams was a surprise to me as well. I just didn't think that we would be able to get him either. And like I said, for the first time in a long time going into the season, I can't remember recently being this happy about the coaching staff that we have on that field.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, a lot of people are right now saying, because if you read like some articles, they're saying the Browns have a great coaching staff except for one thing. And is it wrong? He hasn't been the greatest coach, absolutely not. But at the same time, you also got to realize he was given such a bad hand to play with that you really could. It's like if you were to go to, let's say that the Broaddus family went to Vegas and decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and play Texas Hold'em, and you go there and end up trying to play Go Fish. You're not going to do it.
Yeah, true. Very true. Very true. And just to touch back, Sean McVay doesn't have an offensive coordinator. So he's one of those anomalies that is out there doing, and I know it's been like, 1 year. So, but, he's doing pretty well right now. But Hugh needed that. He needed it. You could tell. I mean, the guy was definitely stressed out. He was being stretched beyond his means, and especially being, on a team in Cleveland where you have so much pressure to succeed because we haven't done anything. I wouldn't put that on anybody just to come in and try to do it all by themselves. And that's why I'm not going to necessarily, and I'm pretty sure that if Cold Takes goes through my, tweets and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure there's a tweet buried in there somewhere where I said, just fire you. But, I mean, who doesn't have a tweet like that nowadays?
Absolutely. I mean, right now the way I see it is if this USA Today projection is accurate, I think 5 could be the magic number that does save Hugh's job and gets him renewed because people forget he signed a 3-year contract. So he's going to... because his contract will be up, and he'll be looking for an extension. If he can't get at least 5 wins this year, I honestly think that one of the guys on the coaching staff will take over in the next year or so.
True. And like I said, they set up a good succession plan. But so I know that you touched on the Bengals a little bit as far as what your opinion was with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with the Ravens and talk about them a little bit.
Go ahead.
The Ravens' problem to me, and it's kind of the problem across the AFC North, is that the reason why I feel like the Browns can be in an upswing is because of the quarterback position. The Ravens have he's terrible. I'm going to say it. He's a terrible quarterback. Joe Flacco, one of the most overrated quarterbacks in this league. Had a couple of good, runs, certainly in the playoffs and different things like that. But now, if you look at his stats and break them down, he has absolutely declined. Now, it's not all his fault. The Ravens themselves have not really been good at keeping wide receivers on that roster for whatever reason. And then also, too, that people don't talk about a lot is when they lost Ray Rice, that they never truly recovered from that. And then, of course, they went through the whole thing that Seattle was going through with losing all their defensive guys, when, Ray Lewis retired and, just some other different things is going on with that defense as well. So, to be honest with you, if I was looking at this and breaking it down, I would kind of flip-flop the Browns with the Ravens and the Bengals.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, and have the Bengals coming in last and then Ravens, and then I think the Browns have a good shot to take second in the division, if not surprise people with first. But I'm not going to just jump into the clouds or anything like that. But I'll say realistically, I could see them coming in second or third in this division.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing about the Ravens is, and this is not a great situation, as you said, for them. I mean, Joe Flacco, I'm going to go ahead and borrow a term from one of our colleagues, #GarbageWatch.
Right.
Then you have the guy behind him, Lamar Jackson, who, I'll be honest, I was stunned to see that move, but the problem with Lamar Jackson is, do you know if his type of play can work in this division? I mean, we've seen Colt McCoy get racked up at the line. We've seen RG3 just get annihilated. We've seen this happen several times. Even A.J. McCarron a bit. He didn't do bad, but I would not say that he's a suitable starter in this division. So, you have to realize that when you can run with the football and throw, it's not always a great combination for the North. It works in obvious conferences like the AFC South, even to an extent the East. There's other divisions it works in, just not this one.
Right. And I've been an advocate for that over the years as well, saying that it's not the fact that you don't want a quarterback that can get out there and at least get you a couple of yards, be a little mobile. I mean, we've seen the entire league kind of go that way. And, I mean, for good reason. You know, we want a guy that can get out and scramble a little bit. And even if we look at our current constructed roster with the Browns, Tyrod Taylor has made a living off of his legs, you know, but the guy can also throw and protect the ball as well. And not Johnny. Ooh, I'm sorry. Man, I don't know what I was thinking about. I think I was going to go into a point of the Johnny stuff from previous mobile quarterbacks. But Baker, you know, he is not labeled as a scrambler, but he is mobile where he can get out and get you a couple of yards, 5 to 10 yards if need be, on a third down, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 kind of thing. So I'm going to be honest with you, the Lamar Jackson move scared the living daylights out of me because I was kind of projecting for us that I wanted us to use the first pick originally for like a Bradley Chubb.
Yeah.
Then I thought that we were going to trade the 4th pick, pretty much like everybody else did for a second, and accumulate some more picks, some later first-round picks, and then I thought we was going to grab our quarterback down there. And Lamar was sitting there nicely for us. And I really think this dude is going to be a stud. Now, it's really going to depend on a lot of different things that they surround him with, weapons. Are they going to have him out there, and are they going to fall in love with his legs? Because you see a lot of teams, especially when it comes to these younger guys that can run like that, they fall in love with these players' legs, and they don't allow them to develop completely as a complete quarterback. For example, I'll bring up Michael Vick, even though I don't think it was more so the teams. It was more on Michael Vick himself because he actually came out and said it that he, was lazy as far as with preparation and everything like that for a quarterback. But they relied on his legs a lot. And I haven't seen an athlete like Michael Vick in a league in a long time. But if you were going to name that guy, it would be Lamar Jackson now.
Absolutely. I mean, the other thing you got to realize is, and I don't know if it's going to hold any merit, ACC quarterbacks, while you have good ones like Deshaun Watson that come out, it does not always bode well for some reason. I mean, how many times have we seen, for like every Bernie Kosar, do we get essentially a garbage quarterback, pretty much? I mean, I hate to say it, I'm a huge Miami Hurricanes fan, but it is what it is. I mean, ACC quarterbacks, for some reason, just have not been able to translate well to the NFL, minus certain exceptions.
Well, you know what? When it comes to that whole school thing, I laugh, especially when people say, well, he's from USC. That's always a great joke to me.
Oh, yeah.
But we can't really hold any merit to that argument anymore because the people that are at the top right now, it's hit or miss all over the place. They could come from a big school, or they could end up coming from Miami of Ohio. It's all over the place. So really when it comes down to schools and stuff, I mean, it definitely is important to look into it because you want to see what kind of schemes they run. Are they spending time underneath the center, or are they more so in the shotgun, kind of how like Baker was?
Mm-hmm.
That definitely should, hold some warrant as far as, when you're looking at different things with that quarterback. But that whole school thing, unless we're joking around about USC, because it just happens to be true, I don't really hold any merit to that anymore. Some schools they have a thing with producing some quarterbacks. I mean, we've seen Tom Brady come out of Michigan, but we can't really say who the next biggest Michigan quarterback was, even though I think they got somebody coming up now that is supposed to be projected pretty good. But, like the Chad Henneys, I mean, like they didn't really have anybody else come out outside of Tom Brady, and even Tom Brady was projected in the 6th round. So, that was an anomaly as far as Ohio State because, I'm here in the state of Ohio. We haven't had a quarterback come out ever, even though they performed really, really good in college. And, for instance, like Cardale Jones, took us and won us a championship. JT Barrett broke entire records and, was overall. And, I hope he's good. He went to a great situation, I believe, down in New Orleans.
Oh, absolutely.
But, you say what now?
Absolutely. I mean, I honestly could see him being, as much as this one's going to pain me to say it, I could see him being the next Kurt Warner in the sense that he goes undrafted and then just tears up the league. I mean, he's got a great teacher ahead of him, and no offense, I just don't see their current backup to getting the job done.
Yeah, and that's true, and that's something that, I always keep an eye on because, like I said, again, he's Ohio State, so I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it. But, like I said, with quarterbacks in schools, man, it's just completely hit or miss or whatnot, man. But real quickly, let's hop into and talk about who they projected us as the, to win the division, the Steelers at 10-6. And I know that when you read that, I could kind of sense the tenseness in your voice. So I'm pretty sure you have some opinions on this. So what do you got?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think the Steelers will win the division. I'm not going to say otherwise on that one. I mean, they got that one right. But my thing is, they don't just have the Steelers winning the division. They just have it just like every other team is not anywhere close. But people seem to forget the Steelers kind of dropped off later in the year. And it could be because maybe they were resting a bit. But that loss to Jacksonville was embarrassing. I hate to say it, but they should have beaten Jacksonville, especially after seeing the Patriots just romp them in the second half of their game. And the problem is, Pittsburgh's got a lot of problems going on with their locker room, as I think we can tell by now. The whole Le'Veon Bell situation, if you don't think that's going to be a distraction, I hate to say it, there's going to be at least some kind of distraction with that. Not to mention, when they lost Ryan Shazier, that was huge, and I don't think enough people give enough credit to that. Then you look at the rest of the team, they're not spring chickens anymore. That whole team is, I hate to use the word a retirement home, but you question how much more Ben's got. The defense is full of older players, and some of them just aren't that great. I mean, a lot of people have talked about how Cleveland should have kept Hayden. Did you see what Hayden did last year? He was worse than two of our other cornerbacks that we had.
Well, what he did is he got injured again, which is the biggest problem that we had with him, is that he couldn't stay available. I still remember the day he got released, that he got released. I was sitting in the airport on the way to some convention or something like that in Pennsylvania at the time. And, I was listening to the radio and everything, and the alert came across my screen, and I said, oh, my goodness. But it was worth it. It really was. I mean, to be honest with you, I had a Browns Joe Hayden jersey. Like, I got a Hayden jersey.
Absolutely. So I'm pretty sure everybody had at least a T-shirt of Hayden at that time.
Yeah, so it wasn't like I was, get him out of here, I hate him. But it was more so like, yeah, it's definitely time. So I guess that was one of the good moves that we've done back in pre-John Dorsey era.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I agree with you completely with the Steelers roster. It's definitely getting older. A lot of these cats are, commanding that big money, which is something that we see with teams that are good. You can't. That's the thing about the NFL or any sport for that matter. You can't stay good for too long. Because you're gonna get some key pieces and big players that are gonna want and command that type of money. And this whole charade with Le'Veon and the Steelers going back and forth, to me, it's gotten quite boring. I understand from his standpoint. I've always been pro player when I say go get your money. And then I understand from the organization standpoint that they're not going to put the value on running backs like that, even though I think he accounts for over 30% of their offense with being on the field, which is absolutely ridiculous. And that's the thing. Let me ask you this, Eric, real quick.
Yo.
With the Steelers, we know that the ball is going to go to Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like a video game. You know, where in the video game you got that one player that's so dominant. Basically like when Randy Moss was playing, you know, you had guys that would just, you know, throw it in the seam to Randy Moss, just Hail Mary. Because we couldn't stop it. Same thing when, you know, Michael Vick was, you know, in the game, and, you know, people would just snap the ball to him and then just take off running. We couldn't stop it. With the Steelers, like, we know that they're going to throw to Antonio Brown, or they're going to throw or give the ball to Le'Veon Bell, and people still can't stop it. Like, I mean, how ridiculous is that?
It really is ridiculous. I mean, it's almost like, and it's exactly what you said. I mean, it was back in the day when you actually had that one receiver that did it. For me, it was either Moss or, back in the day, Amani Toomer. But the thing is, we know that it's going to go to them, and the thing is, we never shored up that side. Quick question for you. Who was covering Antonio Brown last year for the most part? Do you remember?
Ooh, good question. It wasn't, was it Calhoun?
No, it wasn't, because and Brown was probably wide receiver number 1, if I remember correctly.
Okay, because I thought when we came into the season last year, we were didn't we start off kind of injured in the secondary last year?
I believe so. The thing is, if I remember correctly, I think Jamar Taylor was the guy that started covering him in both games that we played him in, but if I remember correctly, I think McCourty was hurt for the first week or two, and we didn't really see we didn't see him a whole lot. I believe it was, we had Taylor at 1, and then I want to say BBC was 2.
You know what, and that may be, you know what, that sounds a lot more accurate.
And
it definitely does. I'm going to look it up while we keep talking.
Mm-hmm.
But that sounds a lot more accurate.
And
I remember them just getting torched. Like, it was crazy. Plus mixed in with the fact of, you know, like Jabril Peppers, you know, being way out there, which was something that was absolutely hilarious.
Pretty much.
Which is something I still didn't get at all, like why we had them lined up so far out.
I mean, maybe we'll get some answers this year, but just to put a quick little bow on this whole Steelers thing, I honestly just think that they'll win the division. Do I think they'll get to double digits? Possibly, but I'm not as confident in them getting there as I would say Cleveland getting 5 wins right now. Like, I think if I had to put money on something, I would say Cleveland getting 5 wins or more could be higher than the Steelers breaking double digits, just because they're starting to break down, and we saw it last year.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's not a bad prediction at all. So just to go on record again, you're saying that you would give the better chances or odds to Cleveland winning more than 5 games than the Steelers winning 10.
That's what I got right now. I mean, obviously that could change because, for all we know, we could see Tyrod Taylor do something really bad that I'm not going to get into because I don't want to jinx him. Or we could see Ben Roethlisberger all of a sudden become Superman, like just find whatever juice Tom Brady's drinking and just inhale it like it's water.
The one thing that I will put my bets on is that Tyrod, and man, this hurts. This hurts to say, like, because everything in my bone in my body is saying that it's going to go wrong. But if I had to put bets on it, I would say that Tyrod actually comes out and does pretty good. Now, the thing is that doing pretty good for us has been not turning the ball over, as we've seen the crap show last season on that. But my biggest thing I'll be looking at Tyrod to do is if he can actually create some offense, meaning create touchdowns for us, because we know that he'll be able to protect the ball, and I honestly feel he'll still protect the ball. That's been his trend the entire time he's been in the league. So I'm not betting against that. But what I'm betting against and trying to see is if he will be able to create touchdowns, because you've seen quarterbacks where they can go out there and they can throw for 250 yards but still have no touchdowns, no interceptions.
Absolutely.
Or he could go out there and throw for 280 yards and have one touchdown and no interceptions. And that's cool. But if you're not moving the ball in crucial situations, if you're still going 3 and out, when we need to go down the field and score, then that is some of the things that Bills fans have been telling me, is that they're not frustrated with Tyrod the person. They think he's a great person. They're not frustrated with Tyrod necessarily as the football player per se, because he doesn't turn over the ball. But they said where he will get you at and where you'll get really frustrated is that you'll see that there's a play that he could be making or that he should make, and he doesn't make it, and he's conservative, or it doesn't work out. And they said that for the amount of talent that Tyrod has, that's where you'll get frustrated with him, in that regard.
Absolutely. So, just wrap up this whole thing. USA Today, we're hoping that they're wrong, and we're hoping that we do better, pretty much.
Yes, that's the way to put it there.
All right, you're listening to BrownsTown, powered by the 3-Point Conversion.
Hey, I'm Diana Taurasi from the Phoenix Mercury, and you're listening to the 3-Point Conversion Radio.
All right, and we are back from that quick little blip. Thank you. Anyways, we were touching on the quarterback room, and, well, what are your thoughts about the QB room there, LA?
Our QB room, again, I mean, we can't stress this enough. This is one of the best rooms that I've seen in recent memory, without going back into our history, back in the day. But recent memory, from top to bottom, this is one of the most solid QB rooms that we've had. For instance, Tyrod, the playoff experience, especially just coming from it, not that he was like a has-been and, went to the playoffs, 5-6 years ago. But no, he just came fresh off of playoffs. He is hungry. He still has a chip on his shoulder because, again, he's playing on a 1-year deal. So, or 1 year left, I'm sorry. But he basically has a chip on his shoulder. People are still counting him out because in Buffalo, it was the same way with him. And remember when they pulled him and put in their rookie, I can't remember that guy's name.
Nathan Peterman.
Yes. And the guy went in there and threw like 5 interceptions or something crazy that game. But I laughed because I've always been a Tyrod fan from a distance. Mm-hmm. I've always liked his work ethic, his hustle. But just the fact that I always, it's something about rooting for an underdog. He's within that 6'6" kind of feel. And, all the chips were stacked against him, and then he still found a way to be successful. And then as soon as he became a Brown, I was super happy. Everybody was super happy. And then here comes Baker Mayfield. And then it shifted the entire fan. It pretty much split us in half again. Or I would say, you got a fourth of the people over there that's like, Baker. Mm-hmm. He'll be in, within 2 to 3 games, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, how do you guys still want this when we've seen every single year our rookie quarterbacks get thrown out there and just absolutely get obliterated? But again, that was when we also had more of a depleted roster. So I don't think that Baker would have that same type of result. But I still think that, he doesn't need to be in there.
No, so, that's exactly it. I mean, here, just think about some of these years. Last year we had Deshaun Kaiser start 15 games. The other quarterbacks going into training camp, Kevin Hogan, who never really started a game. I think he started... No, never mind. He came in relief in 1 game. Brock Osweiler, who, let's face it, he was set up perfectly in Denver, so you didn't know what was going to happen. And then you had Cody Kessler, who was just no on so many levels. The year before, RG3, McCown, and Kessler, Somebody said it in a different format. The last really good quarterback room, and this is going to hurt, was 2003 when you had Kelly Holcomb and Tim Couch. You had the guy who was essentially the face of your franchise in Tim Couch, and then you had a future, well, what we thought was a future stud in Kelly Holcomb. It's sort of become that way at the moment. We'll have to wait and see how it pans out, but I mean, it's probably as good of a quarterback room at this point, if not better.
I mean, just saying those names and everything, and just going back and remembering how I felt when, you know, like, just for people just saying, like, hey, these are your quarterbacks for this season. You know, like, trying to sit up there and assess and being invited on shows to break down Cody Kessler, Kevin Hogan, and Deshaun Kaiser. I mean, like, I just can't believe, like, it's literally a night and day type situation here. And like I said, more so just resting on the shoulders of Tyrod. And, you know, I'm excited for Baker, just like anybody else would be. But at the end of the day, I don't want him in there. I want him to sit back and learn. I think Tyrod is like the perfect quarterback for him to sit back and learn from.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm not one of those guys that are like just begging for Baker to be in there. I really am rooting not only, of course, for our team's success, but I'm rooting for Tyrod to go in there and tear it up. Like, I really want him to keep Baker at bay for him to learn. Now, that will really show us what kind of guy Baker is, because we know he's very competitive. We know that he wants to go out there and win the starting job, which, you know, you should want to. But this will really tell us, like, his true personality and show his true colors if Tyrod goes out there and tears it up. And that's the one thing that I'm going to be keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. I mean, let me tell you something from actual experience. Back in 2015, I was at Browns versus the Raiders. I don't know if you'll remember this one, but it was the week right after they beat the Tennessee Titans when Josh McCown was hurt and they had Manziel starting. Do you remember what happened during that Raiders game when it was announced that Josh McCown was the starter?
You mean like the initial like fan reaction?
I'm talking about the reaction for the whole game.
Not off the top of my head, no.
What happened was, the minute McCown took the field, they started booing Josh. And
yeah.
Josh actually was having a good game. He actually threw for over 300 yards, had a couple touchdowns. Browns lost, obviously, but that's beside the point. But then fourth quarter comes around. We want Johnny's chant starts breaking out. It was so bad, and I'll be honest, I had never been so embarrassed to be a fan at that point than I was at that time, just because it was Johnny Manziel mania going off the rails when, let's face it, he wasn't the starting quarterback at that time. It was still McCown's job, just because he won a game against a Tennessee team who was just not that good, and it was before Mariota had to really prove anything. It just was not pretty, and it made me question a lot of stuff. And
yeah,
I see.
And that's the thing with our fans, man. Like, we want it now, and I understand why. Like I said, we've been just terrible, laughing stock. I mean, you know, anytime you say that you're a Browns fan, the first reaction from somebody is, you know, I'm sorry for your loss, you know, stuff like that. So I get it, but I mean, that's why they have us here, you know, so that we can break down and be logical for them. But understanding from a fan standpoint, like, I get it. You want the hot new toy that just, you know, that you just got. You just unwrapped Christmas gifts and, you know, you got a hot new toy, but it's just like you unwrapped it, you know what it is, but your dad tells you got to keep it in the box because you still got other toys you can play with. That's terrible. Like, you know, that feeling is terrible.
Mm-hmm. It really is, but at the same time, if you watched Baker last year, you saw that he could play at this level almost. Like, he has the tools. It's not worth it to rush him, though. I mean, there are Jet fans right now. I have friends that are Jet fans that have been saying the same exact thing about Sam Darnold And I just tell them, you really want to throw this kid out there after seeing what happened with Mark Sanchez? And they're like, why? It wasn't Sanchez's fault. And I was like, yeah, but you still don't want to throw him out there to the Wolves right away. We've done it so many times, it's not even funny.
That's true.
But this quarterback room, I'll say it, it's the best since 2003, I believe. And you know what? I feel confident that this quarterback room, if they allow Tyrod to come back for another year, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how Baker's progress is and how Tyrod does. I think could be a force to be reckoned with for the next couple years.
Yeah, I believe so. And and it's time for the Browns to be looked at in that division as a smart team as well, because we know that and we mentioned earlier when we were talking about the records is that we know that the Steelers are probably going to have a down. It's coming. They will have a down year, but these franchises are very smart and they always retool, and that's why they've been able to stay successful for so long. So, in my opinion, Browns need to strike while it's hot, and this QB room is something that will lead them to success. Now, I want to get your opinions because we've always had that third wheel guy in the clubhouse before, and this year it's no different. It's Drew Stanton.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your opinions on him? What do you feel like he's going to bring to the table overall, and what kind of an impact do you feel like he's going to have in that QB room?
Well, Drew Stanton, I believe, was brought in to do one thing, and that was he was brought in to teach Baker Mayfield. I mean, no offense to Tyrod, he was brought in to win, but that's the thing. He's here to win. He's not here to teach. I mean, could he show him a couple things? Sure. But at the same time, he's not going to be overly abundant when it comes to education. Stanton, meanwhile, he's taught. There's actually quite a few players that he did teach if you really get down to it. Like, just looking at his resume, he just came back from Arizona. And if you don't think he helped teach Carson Palmer a little bit, I'm pretty sure he had some say in that matter. Indianapolis, he had to teach Andrew Luck. As much as people may say, oh, Luck was a ready-made player, you sure about that? Because there's no such thing as a ready-made player in the NFL anymore. Detroit, he was the one that taught Matthew Stafford. Same thing. And then he spent 1 year with the Jets, but we don't like to talk about that.
No, I agree. Drew Stanton, when I seen that we picked him up, I was thrilled. More so because of the fact of how you just named all these teams. He, was definitely a pro's pro. One of those guys, like kind of how like McCown was, for us back in the day when he was here. And, if his number is called, he will definitely step in and, we're not expecting him to just light up the world or anything like that, but I feel like he is definitely competent enough to step in, in case Taylor does go down and needs to come out of the game or just anything like that. Now, my question to you would be this. So, say, for instance, Taylor goes down, knock on wood, we hope that never happens. Mm-hmm. But if Taylor goes down, would you be more inclined to throw in Stanton or would you go to Baker?
Well, in all honesty, that may be the question of the day. At this point, I would say I'd be more comfortable with Stanton just because Stanton's already started quite a few games, and he actually has a positive record. However, what it really will come down to is how has Baker progressed? If he's looking more like a starting quarterback, I don't see the problem with that. But at the same time, right now, I think Stanton would probably be the initial one to go to. It would be different if it was, say, late in the season and you didn't want him to get hurt, and then you just throw Baker in there just to get, like, a taste of the game. But I'm not rushing right now to say, oh, let's get this new toy out here.
Right. Yeah, and that's my thing too. Is I really want them that if something like that were to happen, and really too, it depends on where we are in the course of the season. Because if it's at the start of the season, no. If it's at the middle of the season, yeah, depending on record and where we're at. If it's at the end of the season and we're trying to get in the playoffs and stuff, definitely not. But if it's garbage time, and that's something that we're accustomed to, then yeah, kick the tires on him a little bit on Baker and see where he's at and how he's progressed during the season. My thing is this though. I want them to preserve Baker's innocence for as long as possible.
I completely agree.
Yeah, so meaning, to the people out there that didn't understand that analogy, if we can think in our head that Baker's going to be the truth for as long as possible, then let's keep that. Because if he goes out there and he just stinks it up, then all of a sudden we're going to hear all these groans and moans. Baker's a bust. We blew it again. Fire John Dorsey. All the stuff and hoopla that we've been going through for years. We're going to see that. Now, if he goes out there and he just torches it, then we're going to hear the moans and groans saying, well, Baker torched it. Why do we need Tyrod? Let him walk. We got our quarterback of the future. Because Baker could absolutely go out and torch that one game or that second half or, whatever would happen in that game situation. But it doesn't mean that he's ready to be a full-time starter over a course of an entire NFL season.
Exactly. I mean, if you're going to just put him in there because short-term it makes sense, then you're losing sight of the big picture. And that's the problem with a lot of our fans. They quickly lose their view of the big picture.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we're all about the here and now. And like I said, I understand it. I get it. I sympathize. But, Rome wasn't built in a day. These great dynasties, like the Patriots, like, the Steelers, and any other franchise that have had, like, success like that, they didn't get there just by, snapping their fingers or clicking their heels like Dorothy and getting there overnight. Like, it took a process. The Steelers, for instance, they were good back in the day, and then they had some downtime a little bit, and then after that, boom, draft Ben Roethlisberger, and boom, they're back in there doing some things again and sustaining it. The same thing with the Patriots. The Patriots have had their, up and downs, and even, with Brady, if you want to call it a down time where, it was a couple of times where they didn't even make it to the Super Bowl because, mostly the Patriots fans are so spoiled that, they assume that, yeah, if Brady's coming out, we're going to the Super Bowl every single year. So, but, these franchises, they haven't always been that way. And that's why also, too, you see so much, different things and trends in the NFL because it's not a guarantee. For example, with the Houston Texans last year, we were all banking them to really do well. And then, boom, 2 major injuries happen, and the rest is history.
Absolutely. So, but anyways, you are listening to the BrownsTown podcast, powered by the 3-point conversion.
Hey, this is Brittany Griner from the Phoenix Mercury, and you listen to the 3-point conversion.
And we're back. We talked about the quarterbacks. How about their best friend? I'm not talking about the wide receivers. I'm talking about the running backs.
Ooh.
And the past few years we thought we had gold. Isaiah Crowell came off a good year, but couldn't put it together the next year, and the limited opportunities. But Duke Johnson, out of nowhere, exploded. And you know what? I'll be honest. I think that right now, this running back room could be one of the top 5 that we've had. I'm not going to say it's the best because it's clearly not the best. We had a time when we had Jamal Lewis with about 2 or 3 other potential players that were pretty good. We had a time when we had Terrence West, Isaiah Crowell, both averaging nearly 800 yards a season. So what I'm seeing with this running back room is such a strong room. And you know what? I think that it's going to turn some heads. And early take for me, I think Nick Chubb, partway through the season, will become higher up on the depth chart than Carlos Hyde.
You know what? And that's not a bad prediction at all. Nick Chubb has just absolutely looked phenomenal, and that's one of the players I can't wait to get my eyes on in person. When they took him, I was extremely ecstatic for the running game. Mm-hmm. When it comes to running back, unless you got that main powerful guy like a Le'Veon Bell, like a Todd Gurley, all these people that have emerged, you need to kind of have that running back by committee approach. And, Carlos Hyde, as much as I like him, of course, because of his Ohio State ties and all of that, he is older. He's an older running back. When you look at his stats, he is not completely just blown the hinges off the doors for you. I know that his first couple of seasons he did really, really well, but then he kind of went down a little bit because he's had injuries throughout his entire career, his short career being in the NFL. So immediately when I seen that we signed him, I was like, okay, we definitely need to make sure that we have some insurance here for when and if he does go down. Nick Chubb is definitely that guy. And Duke, I'm glad that we were able to get that deal done with him because you seen as soon as he got signed, that cleared an entire fog that was over that particular position room. Mm-hmm. Because Duke, crazy enough, is kind of diva-ish. You seen how he went through and, deleted everything in his Instagram and just cleaned everything out, had a profile picture with a question mark, which I still think he has right now.
Yes,
he does. It just, at one point in time, and I remember us discussing this, is we were just like, oh, crap, what is going on with Duke? And we just kind of felt like it was going to be doom and gloom, but we were able to get a deal done.
But that's exactly it. I mean, when you look at that whole situation, it was weird, but at the same time, he was hinting that he was still working out with players and that he didn't want to go anywhere else. I hate to say it, Duke, I think, will be a captain next year. I mean, there's a whole just think about the players that were captains last year. Joe Thomas, retired. If I remember correctly, I think Jamar Taylor was a captain. Gone. Honestly, those are the only two that I can even think of at this point, but considering that Duke is probably the one constant in that locker room, and this is no offense to Josh Gordon, but he's missed a lot of time to the point that I wouldn't put the C on him. I think Duke should be should be considered one of the captains of this team at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Duke should definitely be one of the guys. Of course, we'll be looking across to some players defensively as well. Maybe even, a lineman, offensive lineman maybe.
Yeah, I could see, if I had to take a guess, probably Batonio at this point. I mean, I love Zeitler, but Batonio has been doing this on a consistent basis. He doesn't get a whole lot of credit. We'll get to that in the next few weeks, obviously, because the offensive line is going to be a hot topic to talk about, but in terms of
that left tackle position.
Oh yeah, that's going to be the most fun. Let's be honest. But at this point in time, I think when you're talking from
you think Zeitler he would get the C?
I think either Zeitler or Batonio at this point is getting the C on the line.
Got you. What do you think about Jamie Collins?
Collins, I have a weird feeling, and I got questioned about this because of a lot of things, but I honestly think Jamie Collins at this point has to do something, because I think Dorsey is looking at this guy and he might have a target on his back. That's not saying that he's going to be bad, not at all, but he looks like the guy that is the odd man out in this situation. Kirksey's been here for a while. Joe Schobert, a lot of people have been saying, Joe's not that great. He just led the NFL in tackles, or was one of the top 3 guys in tackles. I understand the reasoning behind it is a little weak, but we had this...
I was going to say, a lot of people don't give players like that love, especially with how bad our offense did, especially with the turnover ratio. Our defense was on the field absolutely way too much, and that contributed to a lot of our losses because they were gassed. I mean, if you think about it, when that defense was fresh, we held people. It was very hard for people to score on us last year, but then we would have Deshaun Kaiser trot out and just give the defense the ball, just give the other team the ball right back, within 1 to 2 series, and then now you got a gassed defense out there. So I can understand the inflated numbers of that, but I think the reason why, people were talking about Joe Schobert like that is because of the signings, of, Mikael Kendricks, and then also too, man, of drafting, Avery, who has been getting a lot of praise lately, for the way that he's been training and looking out there too, Jannard Avery.
Yeah.
So, that actually, that will be something that we'll have to break down and highlight too, man, just how these linebackers are going to play out because at one point, leading up to training camp, we were saying that was one of our areas of concern. We were kind of light there. So if one of them went down, it was kind of like, okay, well, where are we going next? But now that's actually become a position of strength for us.
Absolutely, but getting back to the whole Jamie Collins thing, I think the Browns could try to trade him, to be honest. I mean, as weird as it sounds, I have Sport Track up right now, Spot Track. I don't know if you've seen, it pretty much tells you who's going to be a free agent next year. Listen to these names. Ezekiel Ansah, DeMarcus Lawrence, let's see, LaMarcus Joyner, Randall Cobb, Dante Moncrief. There's Tyrann Mathieu. You look at this list, if the Browns have a good year, they could have enough money to Jadeveon Clowney even. They could have enough to pull off the ultimate moves to take them to the next level. If we don't have that money, which we have $70 million now, but you know what? Some of that money is going to be used to re-sign players.
Right, because we're not letting people walk out of the door like how we used to. I mean, we have to keep our talent.
Absolutely, but there's a lot of talent, and you know what? Not for nothing, Jamie Collins can be a good player, and he can be a good influence. But this was at a time when this team didn't have a whole lot of talent. If you remember that linebacking core, the only good person that was there at the time was Kirksey. And if I remember correctly, I believe that it was a completely different system at the time as well. I mean, I believe we were running at that time a 3-4 under Ray Horton.
Yeah, that's when he came back. Yeah, I agree completely, with your assessment. But I and that's another thing, especially with covering, NBA as we do as well, is that a lot of times we have to look at free agent signings in the NFL and NBA a lot differently because the NBA, a lot of times they pay players off of what they've done for them instead of what they can do. Mm-hmm. And the NFL, we think that they're so cutthroat, but it's because the NFL has a great job of trying to project, okay, what else can I get out of this player in the future? And this is the amount of money I'm going to give them.
That's
so. Yeah, they signed players a lot differently. So I can see that happening. When it comes to Jamie, and because you want to kind of say thanks Jamie. You signed here. You were a big name for us, especially when we were going through all this crap, and you want to show that appreciation. But at the same time, it's like no, the NFL is looking to seeing, hey, what can we get out of Jamie still? With him being now coming off of a major injury, The guy is, 28 right now?
I believe so.
So, yeah, he's 28 right now, and, by the time his contract up, he's going to be in his 30s, so it's kind of like, all right, so what do we pay him now? So
that's exactly it. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch, but getting back to the running backs, honestly, there's really not a whole lot to say. It's a good running back core.
It is.
This is Leilani Mitchell from the Phoenix Mercury, and you're listening to the 3-Point Conversion.
All right, and it's now time for the main event. I might have to go find a bell for that at some point, but anyway.
Ding, ding, ding.
Do. Okay, the wide receiver core. What is there to say that hasn't been said? You have a new number one. Well, a returning number one. You have a brand new slot receiver who is probably been the best wide receiver in the NFL lately, behind Antonio Brown. You have a huge question mark at wide receiver number 2, as well as wide receiver number 4, and you have a huge question for kick returners now that Jeff Janis is here.
So, real quick before we start diving into it, just to tell the fans and the people out there, the way we come out with our main event is we will actually be doing a poll every single week. You will be able to get the poll on our personal Twitter accounts. Mine is at LA_Broadus. His is at Stoshball.
Yep, you got it.
And then also, too, on Facebook and our group, BrownsTown USA. So just make sure you look that up. As long as you answer the security questions correctly and don't have a Kansas City Chiefs profile picture, we will let you in the group.
I forgot about
you
that.
can vote. And then you can vote the poll, and that will determine what our main event is the next, on the next BrownsTown podcast. So, nice way to interact with you guys and hear your thoughts. And like I said, we don't claim to know it all, but we know a lot about a little. So, that being said, this wide receiver room is very intriguing because we have the names.
Mm-hmm.
But, and for instance, how many times have you seen that rumor right now that, oh my gosh, Josh Gordon has popped hot?
I'm getting sick of that tweet going around when everyone's just like, oh, well, they're just not saying anything because they want to reveal it during Harden. This is not how the NFL works. If you think that's how the NFL works, you're a dumbass. Get back on the bus, young man.
Well, he felt pretty strong about that. We don't normally, this is a family show. But I understand completely. Yeah, we have to be careful with these rumors. We already know that Josh Gordon is working on this last one, but everybody that has talked about this guy has just talked about how hard he's worked to come back from everything that's happened to him. And we see it on the field. We see it in, just the way he looks. I mean, the guy's chiseled. Not to be trying to comment too much on another guy's body, but I mean, he's laid out. He's cut up. I'm definitely rooting for Josh, because at first I was one of those guys that, after the second or third time, I was like, man, we just need to go ahead and part ways with this guy. But we didn't. We stuck with him, and it makes sense because, we are in the driver's seat when it comes to, his contract and negotiations, and he has to prove it to us. But just amazing talent. Now, of course, with Jarvis is Jarvis. Jarvis is old, reliable. And that's, like I said, and that's another thing that I'm excited about because we have an old reliable in Tyrod, which, we know that he's not going to turn over the ball. And then we got an old reliable in Jarvis where we know he's a catching machine. And he mentioned in one of his interviews a couple of days ago with a good friend of ours that basically Todd Haley was going to have him all over the place. So we weren't going to just see him in the slot, but we were going to see him on the outside, and just all over the place, and he's going to move him around a lot. And that definitely sounds like Todd Haley. He looks like he wants to use, Jarvis as like an Antonio Brown type, prototype. And I'm not comparing the two right off the bat right now. We can get into that later. But I like it. And that's the one thing that we have to remember. Like, Todd Haley is an offensive genius. And to have a Jarvis, and then now all of a sudden you got Josh that can just absolutely torch. And then on top of that, you got an emerging wide receiver and Callaway, who is another guy that we have to keep an eye on. And that's why I said, man, it's an exciting room where it keeps you on your toes and adrenaline pumping. But at the same time, that adrenaline is pumping because you don't know if that guy's going to be there for you that next Sunday because of his history.
That's exactly it. I mean, it's exciting, and when you get down to it, Gordon has the potential to be a top 5 wide receiver. Jarvis Landry has the potential to be a top 5 receiver. And if they do well, then kudos. John Dorsey looks like a stud, but if it doesn't happen, that's not good. One of the biggest things, though, that, as you did say, is that third wide receiver. I mean, Callaway definitely is going to be in the mix. I have weird feelings about Corey Coleman at this point. I mean,
it's not weird at all. I understand completely.
Like,
everybody does.
The thing is,
everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's not because of the drop pass. That happens. And it happened a lot with, not Coleman, but it happened a lot with receivers that did play with Kaiser last year. But that's water under the bridge at this point. But when you hear the speculation that Todd Haley is questioning his work ethic, that's not good at all.
Yeah, and then they basically came out in the press conference and said that this is his third year, and this is like that make or break type year for him, and that's a good thing. We don't have him locked up with a lot of money because he's playing on his rookie deal still. The biggest things that I was looking at for Corey is not so much the drop passes, but because of his injury history, and you don't know when he's stepping out on the field if he's 100%, which can play a factor in the drop passes and all of that. If you're not 100%, you're thinking about your injury or you're second-guessing, you're not going to be fully confident in your abilities if you're injured. So I'm not saying I'm writing off the drop passes, but I can understand, especially when his injuries have majorly been with his hand or arm or something that has to do with catching the ball. So that's why I feel like that third slot right there is definitely open for the taking. I know that you mentioned before when we talked. Didn't you say that you were kind of a fan of Rashard Higgins?
Honestly, I've always liked Rashard. The thing is, he never really got the opportunities because of injury or because we kept firing and re-signing Ricardo Lewis. I think we did that about 3 times last year. The only guy that I think that was in and out of the team more often was Jordan Leslie. But that's the thing. I saw him last year, and he torched Pittsburgh. I mean, provided it was Joe Hayden, but you know what? Over 100 yards. I think he had 1 or 2 touchdowns. The guy was that good. And you know what? If you don't want to believe in Hollywood, that's fine. I think that maybe Hollywood and Antonio Callaway are 2 of the names to obviously watch. Lewis is sticking around somehow, and no matter how bitter he seemed that he's not getting the invites to do stuff with Landry and the rest of the offense anymore. But it is what it is. I think there are better options right now than Corey Coleman. I mean, there's been some speculation that maybe we trade him to try to move up, but you know what? At this point, let's just see what we have with these other receivers. I mean, we have good wide receiving talent. It's just a matter of, can we get the most out of it?
True. Absolutely. And that's another thing, too. I know we had already discussed the quarterback position a little bit earlier, but this is probably some of the best talent that has been around Tyrod as far as offensive weapons. So I know he's licking his chops because we've seen what he was able to do in Buffalo with only having, a running back and, inconsistent. Well, I'm not going to say inconsistent because their tight end position was pretty solid for a little bit. But, Sammy Watkins, when he was up there, was in and out all the time. So he's never really had a wide receiver that he could connect with and just actually, be comfortable with, like how I feel that he can be with, Jarvis and with Josh. And, we've seen them working in the offseason, putting in work together. So I'm very excited because we have a constant in Tyrod, and we have a constant in Jarvis, not looking at Josh. And, I always looked at Josh as that extra, whipped cream on top of the ice cream sundae right now, just because you can do without it. I don't always order whipped cream with my ice cream, but, it is the perfect topping on top of a ice cream sundae. And when you get it, it's a pleasant surprise, and it tastes great, and it puts it over the top. But if not, you're okay.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, this is going to be a big year. I mean, we'll get into like the tight ends later on in the summer. I guess we're still in summer for right now. We'll get into all that coming up within the next few weeks. Depends if we decide to switch over to some of the defensive skill positions next week, or if we decide to wrap up offense. But we'll wait and see. But this is going to be huge, and it all started. People seem to forget this whole trend of changes started with one move last season, and that was getting rid of Kenny Britt. When you ultimately think about it,
yeah, I'm not a big fan of, like I said, cursing on this show.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a move that, I mean, we could see from a mile away. I never was really excited when they brought in Kenny. And then I'm trying to think of who was the other wide receiver we brought in before him. Like, it was another free agent wide receiver. Trying to think of the year prior.
Wait, are you talking about Dwayne Bowe?
Yeah. Like, it's like for a couple of years in a row, we were just needing some help at that wide receiver position with Josh being out, and we were just looking for anything. And it was like we kept bringing in these super old wide receivers that, had a big name, but we already knew that, like, their production was down. It would be kind of like, say, if we didn't get Jarvis this year, and say if Josh wasn't here, and then we were like, oh, okay, well, let's go out and sign Des Bryant. Like, like we would just know, again, that it's not going to happen. Like, it's not going to translate well on the field. And we've just had a bad track record of that. So, like I said, this year, we got some young guns, some young legs, some reliability there. Of course, there's always certain elements and aspects that can happen, but we're being optimistic here today. But like I said, I'm very excited about this room, more excited than I've been in a long time for the wide receivers that we got. But at the same time, we do have that fear factor element as well, because at any point in time, if one of these guys do something off the field, it could derail that position. I'm not saying the entire team, because I think we're built pretty good still, but it would really suck to lose like a Josh, or it'll even suck to lose Antonio to a certain degree, because he's such an exciting player, and I want to see what he can do.
Absolutely. And on that kind of a positive note, we're done. I mean, what an exciting week. I mean, we talked heavily about probably the most exciting things that we've done this offseason.
Absolutely. And I look forward to, make sure that you continue to tune into the BrownsTown podcast, because we're going to be breaking down, like I said, position by position. And then, again, training camp is getting started up. And, I'll be blessed to be able to be there and kind of check it out in person. So I'll be giving my takes and different things that I've seen from being out there and watching. And we'll continue to keep giving you that good BrownsTown coverage that you know and want.
Absolutely. Keep it locked, because the fact is, training camp starts in 5 days. Think about that. The 25th is when training camp opens, and
it's exciting. I'm like getting like little goosebumps, and it's not because it's chilly up here in Ohio, but I'm just really excited, man. Just I can't imagine a seat. Well, I can't imagine because there has been some seasons that we've pumped ourselves up, but this season just feels different because you're excited, but at the same time, like you're battling with yourself as far as being cautiously optimistic. But at the same time, you're like, but we can actually be good, So it's kind of like a battle of just going back and forth, with this team this year. But I'm really excited to see it. I'm excited to see what Hard Knocks does with this team, and I hope that just something that comes out and it's like, man, so people can say, well, it's the Browns kind of thing. Because I don't know, were you able, before we hop off, were you able to catch the opening of the trailer of Hard Knocks?
Yes, I was, and I'll be honest, it doesn't worry me just because the fact is, it is the Browns. It's just like, the best way to put it, let me borrow a quote from, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Married with Children.
I've seen it before. Well, yeah, I used to watch it.
Like, the best way to put it is, I don't fear anything, I'm married. It's almost like we're married to the Browns. Do you really think that some little TV show is going to scare us?
True. So the thing that I didn't agree with, and listening to a lot of sports radio up here, is there was two things that really rubbed us the wrong way, and one was with the Hard Knock trailer, they kind of opened and depicted off of, the whole woe is me, factory of sadness kind of thing. And a lot of people was just saying, like, look, that's not – they kind of felt like they were talking about all of Cleveland. And they were like, no, that's not us because, the Indians have been in contention for quite a few years now and still making good moves. And then the Cavaliers brought a championship to the city. So the whole – Cleveland woe was me thing, that's not really the narrative for the whole city. It's just something for the Browns. And I can understand that perspective, but at the same time, if you're up here in the city and you actually like live here and know, this is a blue collar town. They work hard, and it's a football state. It's a football town. Like they love their football. So as much as it was good to see, the Cavaliers bring a championship to the city, you still have people that was like, well, it would mean a lot more if the Browns did it, and the same thing with the Indians going to the World Series. It was like, yeah, that's cool and all, but we still need to see the Browns in the Super Bowl, so it's like, it's still a football city, and I think that Cleveland would absolutely be set on fire if we was looking for that replacement, after LeBron left to go to LA kind of thing.
How many people stepped up with that?
It would be that. You say what now?
How many people, from the Browns alone stepped up? I mean, we saw Baker throw his name into the ring, Myles Garrett, Kirksey, Josh Gordon. This is honestly great, but you know what? Let's focus and get the job done.
Yes, absolutely, and I can't wait, man. I think it's there. We're right there on the edge of getting our breakthrough finally as being Browns fans, and I have a dream that one day we can go out and wear our Browns jerseys proudly. I mean, I do now, so but I do it with still where I remember wearing it at work. When I stayed in North Carolina, and it was just like every single time I seen somebody, it was like, oh. You're really a Cleveland fan? And I'm like, yeah, I am. Like, what's the problem? So it's it was like, getting those shots, man. I'm tired of getting those shots, those punches to the gut. I'm ready to just be able to come on and say, hey, yeah, I'm a Cleveland fan. We went to the playoffs. Man, can't wait till next year. Something like that. So I think we'll get there.
I have a dream that the Browns will finally do something right. I have a dream that Nick Chubb will break the ankles of that guy from Cincinnati who keeps injuring people, Vontez, the convict. I have a dream that you will join us next week when we talk about more Cleveland Browns goodies and finally talk about how David Njoku will somehow be on the level of Gronk, even though he probably won't be. But you know what? He'll come close enough because Gronk's always injured.
Those are great dreams, except for the fact that I know that they'll be tuning in next week. So that you don't have to dream about that.
Absolutely. So we will see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in. Broadus, any final thoughts?
Let's go Browns.
Here we go, Brownies. Woof. Woof. See you next week.